Hi there and welcome to this session on better buildings, and the intent here is to show you how to model in our building application and look at geometry from a residential perspective. So we're going to look at typical features that would enable you to represent a building, a residential building. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, of course, we're going to need to model something. So I've got some drawings and I'm going to want to share those with you. So let me go and grab those now. And here they are. It's a very, very simple drawing. I tend to use this quite often, this particular drawing set, A, because it's free and copyright free, and B, because it kind of represents something suitable for most applications. What is it? Well, this is a ground floor. It's got a garage and it's got a hallway. It's got a stairway and it's got a toilet. It's got a living space and it's got a combined living and kitchen space. So there's a lot we can do with this, and we're going to use this repeatedly throughout the courses in order to undertake all sorts of modeling, because it's a really suitable model to do that. So the intent here is to set you up with a model that you're going to use for other courses moving forward, so you don't have to go ahead and resolve geometry again. So we're going to get your geometry skills up, and then we're going to move on to the subject matter of inputs and results in other courses. So this is the ground level. This is the upper level. Just a few bedrooms, 4 in total. A couple of bathroom spaces. Nothing too much. It doesn't directly sit over the ground level. We have a couple of different roof systems. Really 3, in fact, from a better building perspective. We've got a 5-degree angle on this roof here. I'm going to model this as a warm roof system. I'm going to model this as a cold roof system, meaning that we're going to project the space below, so it's on an angle, the insulated roof. Here we're going to have a flat roof system where the ceiling forms the insulation line, and over here we've got the garage. So we've got a mix of things kind of going on here, and I'm going to show you how to do all of that. It's a reasonable model to use because it's got everything you'd expect to see from a typical residential perspective. So let's go ahead and get into the project. Okay, so here we are back in the dashboard. We're going to go ahead and start our project by clicking Create Project. We're then going to put in some details about the project. I'm just going to put in some random details here. I'm going to pop this into Sydney. Should you want to be super specific, go ahead and be specific all you like. All we're doing at this point is generating the geographic location or the coordinates, and we're mapping a climate file to your design in order for you to use that at a later stage. I'm going to pop this at a floor-to-floor height of 3,000 maybe. I'm going to say it's 2 stories. I'm then going to navigate down to really, this is what we call the workflow area. So we've got a number of workflows that you could adopt. I'm not going to adopt a workflow in this case. I'm not going to tether it to H1 or tether it to the National Construction Code or any other code internationally, because I'm only really interested in the geometry. So we're going to leave it here in designer mode and click Create. If you were doing a model in H1, select H1, one of the H1 workflows. If you were doing a model to the National Construction Code, obviously select one of those. Once we click Create, we're given the view where we're told, hey, okay, there's the location, that's confirmed, 2 stories, that's confirmed, floor-to-floor height, that's confirmed, and so is the code, in this case designer mode, which isn't really a code, but it's there. Okay, then you're presented with a bunch of other information over here on the left pertaining to this project. But we're going to go ahead and create a design in the project, and there's a number you can see, of course, on the screen here. You could bring in a 3D view. We'll keep that. Bring in a 3D model, I should say. We'll keep that for another session. But we're just going to bring in or draw a residential building by left-clicking Building 2D and then giving it a name. I'm just going to call it Concept for the time being, and click Create. So you're then given this getting started screen. Let's go ahead and get started. This is just giving you a preview of what's to come, and then we can then select our concept fabric. All this really is setting baseline, moderate or enhanced performance for glazing systems, and for your wall, roof and floor systems I'm going to default to moderate and lightweight and hit select. Then I'm going to go ahead and create a drawing. So a drawing is really a drawing of one of the levels. Let's call it the ground level, and then you're going to select an underlay. So what you need to do on Better Building is go ahead and grab your PDF and convert it into a PNG file. So PNG there, and you can do that freely or through your PDF software, and you export it, and you're going to bring in the whole drawing. Don't do any copy, screenshots or anything like that. Grab the whole drawing, because you're going to want to have all of that information within your reports down the line. Now you're at this stage, I'm going to go ahead and grab an underlay, and with that now attached, I'm going to click create. So here we are, we're in the drawing space. I'm going to first of all do a couple of things. I'm going to change the grid settings to 0.05, and I'm going to hide some of this stuff over here on the left by clicking that. Then I'm going to explain why you're seeing a big square. The big square is effectively a thermal zone that allows us to save this model at this point in time. So that's now saved. I've just done a bit of a hard save up there. You don't need to do that. What you're going to do is you're going to left click that and hit delete on your keyboard, because we don't actually need that, because we're going to add in a zone very, very soon. Now I'm going to explain everything around as I go through here, so don't think I'm going to forget anything here. You've got a ribbon up the top here, you've got some workflows over here on the right, and you've got some navigation to specific areas of specification and drawing on the left. But we're going to get to those as we go. Now we've got this drawing, we're going to nominate a window that we want to calibrate the drawing. So we're going to go to calibrate drawing, left click, and then we're going to find a window. I like this W3 here because I know the width of that. So I've left clicked one point on the left side of the W3, and then I'm going to hold down shift to lock the axis so it's nice and straight. So it either locks to the X or the Y, and then I'm going to go to the secondary point over here and left click again, and then I'm presented with the option to calibrate the drawing. I know that window is 1500 millimeters, so I'm going to put in 1500 millimeters in the length. I'm going to set units as millimeters, and I'm going to get default to adjusting the underlay and the drawing, and click calibrate. We then get a zoomed in version of this, and we can zoom back out, and then we can go ahead and see if we got that correct. So by adding zones, I'm going to use the measurement function of adding zones, and I'm just going to left click one side and go to the other side, and there you go. You can see it's 1.5. It looks like 1.55 there. It depends how accurate you want to be. If we wanted to redo that process, I might left click again and go here and say, okay, that is a happier version of my 1500 millimeters, and do that again, and then we know that that's correct. Now what I'm going to do now, we're going to just add in a zone so we're able to save. So I'm going to just select the garage here, and I'm just going to draw the garage in roughly. Okay, so I'm just left clicking as I go around the shape. You can go left to right, right to left, and then I'm going to hit enter as I get to the end, or before I get to that last point, and then punch in a name, and it happens to be a garage, so I'm going to call it garage. Then I'm going to go ahead and straighten this up here, because I didn't do a great job the first time. All I did there was I left clicked the zone and then grab the node, as we call them. Then I hit shift, and then it locks. So we want to lock that so it's nice and straight. Best practice, always keep things nice and straight, and then we can then save. So that's now saved. We can then move on, not to completing more drawing here, but we're going to bring in another level. And it's important to get your drawings in first so they're all correctly calibrated. So I'm going to go ahead and pop in another drawing. This one I'm going to call it first floor. Oh, that was a bit rough. First floor. There we go. And then I'm going to go on select an underlay. Now I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. Keep it 3 meters again and click create. So now that's come in. What I'm going to go to do, I'm going to go to underlay here and I'm going to select match underlay. So what is this going to do? Well, this is going to take the calibration from the ground that I've just done a minute ago and it's going to match to that calibration. So I'm going to match it like that, and now we're going to zoom in, give myself a bit more space, zoom in, and then how do I know it's matched? Well, I can go ahead and turn on the ground in terms of the zone that I just drew. So that's the garage zone there, or turn on the drawings. And we can see how, if we zoom in, that matches up pretty well. It's actually a bit of an odd drawing there, but it will match up perfectly. So you can see how the text darkens off there. Seems a little bit off actually there. That point there, I don't know why that's off. It looks like the drawing's actually off. So the this is positioned perfectly. This is actually a good example of another tool. So these must be slightly different drawings than the ones I've used in the past. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the ground level on here, and we're going to want to align that up because I can see this corner here is not matching up with the corner below, and I don't want that because I know that's going to end up with an error down the line. So there's a bunch of ways we can fix this. You may want to go ahead and use this tool here, position underlay. So effectively what this is allowing us to do is to position this underlay relative to the underlay below, and you could do that. You could also go ahead and maybe use, there's another tool here, there's a tool where we can set the origin, and if we set an origin by left clicking set origin, excuse me, let me start that again, left clicking set origin, and then I've just set the origin at that point there. And then I'm going to now do the same over here, set the origin to that point there, and hit save. And what we should be able to do now is see that they're perfectly stacked, one on top of the other. Let me go ahead and get rid of that. And just slow this down a wee bit. So they are stacked one on top of the other. So effectively we've set the origin on the level below, and we've used the same origin point because we know that it's uniform as we go up the building. And we can now start drawing in a zone so we can save this drawing. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw in a zone, and we're going to grab that add zone tools, and we're just going to actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to pop in a random zone like this because we're going to come back to it. Because it's always best practice to draw the levels below and then the levels above, because you're always drawing relative to the levels below. So now that's done, I'm going to go ahead to ground, and we're going to complete the ground level now. Okay, so now we've got this in, let's go ahead and bring in a relatively detailed drawing now. Some workflows mean that you don't need to separate out zones into separate thermal zones. Some workflows dictate that you do. I'm going to assume that you are going to need to separate all of these zones out into single spaces, or single connected zones I should say, for your requirements. So bear in mind this is a much more detailed workflow than, for example, H1 in New Zealand would ever warrant. So what should we do? Let's go ahead and start easy. So the garage here, I'm going to go ahead and draw another zone here, maybe just to represent this kind of bathroom space here. You could even wrap in the stairs, but I'm going to go ahead and pick a point here. So I'm going to click add zones, left click, and bring it around there. I'm holding down shift all the time, always hold down shift, and all I'm going to do is bring this around and just kind of roughly wrap this here. So I'm wrapping in this space all into one. You know, you might find out better ways to do this. And you can you'll notice there that I'm including the dimensions of that window and this door here. And I'm going to close this off here, and I'm going to call this bathroom, and then I'm going to go ahead and resolve something in a second because I've made a bit of a mistake. Next, I'm going to go to the garage here, and I'm going to select Shift again, and I've selected the zone, the garage zone. I'll do that one more time, select it, and then I'm going to dump a node by holding down Shift and navigating, and then I can just dump that like that, and then I can drag that into space because I want to be able to connect to that. Now you see how we've got this snapping going on here. In this case, I don't particularly want to have that happening, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off snapping for a second so we don't have that happening, and then we can really move that into position, and then we can kind of bring everything all into one. Let me pull this around here like this so we can get the dimensions of that door brought in. I'm going to pop the snapping back on now, and then we've got a space that is almost correct. So you see that there is a door coming across here. I'm going to go ahead and make a call that we do have a door there, and then we can go ahead and complete that bathroom space. So that's now complete, and we can then proceed with drawing some more zones. So let's proceed with I guess we're going to proceed with the corridor space here now. Now, I'm going to go ahead and select the garage there and just be a little bit finicky about making sure everything is kind of snapping to where I want it to. So I've selected that zone, and then I'm going to select add zone again. And then I'm just going to make sure that door is provided. I'm going to draw to the outside thermal line here. And maybe I'm going to pick a point where the corridor ends just for no particular purpose. I'm going to pick that point there. It shouldn't make a difference in the model. And then I'm now going to get to that point there because I've left that last point that I created there to snap to the corner of the garage. And now I'm going to hit enter, give it a name. You might want to call it hallway, and then straighten up these nodes. Okay, so we're now starting to get some dimensions in here. What I might consider is actually adding in a couple more nodes here to take into account this space here. Let's say that's an open corridor to this living space, and then I'm going to keep going. Now, one thing that's always important to consider is trying to keep things as straight as possible. Now, there's an unneeded level of detail over here. I personally would take a point of cleaning up the model a little bit. Now, you don't need to follow any particular perfect way of drawing here. You can rough in things like I've just done here, and hit enter, stairs, and then drag things to snap. It's definitely a way to do it, nothing wrong with that. It certainly works. And then what I might do here, because I want to have a uniform line running across here, I might change my mind. I might say, okay, do you know what? I want this kind of dragging over to the same point here. So I've got a nice straight line here, and then I've got a nice straight line there. It's just good practice to make sure this is done in this way. And actually created a small little kind of detailing issue there. Well, not detailing issue, but we'll leave it like that. Okay, there you go. So the cleaner you are with your model, the better it is. So I'm now going to bring in another zone here. This zone here. I'm probably going to take this out to this point here to say that we're drawing to the outer thermal line. There's nothing to say that you need to do this. But I'm going to choose to do this just for it's just my preference, habits that I've generated over the years, and I'm just going to draw in all the shapes relevant here, and then I'm going to rough in these last bits here, and I'm going to call this living space 2. There it is, living space 2. And now we've got that locked in, we can go ahead and just snap away. Okay, so we're drawing in the windows, we're drawing in the doors, we're drawing in the openings as we go. Like, that's an important thing to consider, because it means that you're going to be able to more cleanly nominate the dimensions of the building. I might actually also improve this bit here. See how I don't have that kind of return running there, so it wasn't quite consistent. And the cleaner you are with this stuff, the better. Now, okay, let's keep going. So now I'm going to go ahead and draw in here. We do have a 200mm limit in terms of the length of a wall, so I'm not going to worry about that for the time being. I'm just going to come back to it and work out what to do. I'm going to return this one back down here and keep drawing. And here I'm going to, it's a little bit awkward, this detail here. You can just kind of go ahead and bring it around like that. We can sort out those details later on. Yeah, it's not very consistent here, but I'll come back to these bits. So good practice to see coming back to these. And as I get to the end again, I'm just going to rough that in. I'm going to call that kitchen living. Okay. And you may want to separate these out into two zones, which you can do. And it might be an opportunity to show you another tool in a second to be able to do that. Which, yeah, I think I'll take advantage of that, and I will show you another way to do that. And I'm just going to drop in a node here because I want to be able to improve this, straighten this all up. Okay, and now I'm going to come back to this and just return this wall to the external line. Again, just practice that I undertake. Doesn't mean you have to undertake this practice. So there we go. So we have that zone there, and that's all brought in. So we've got a lot of information for the level below, and the additional feature I wanted to bring in was a feature to go ahead and use our split zoning tool. So if you split this zone here, you might want to click one side to there and the other side to there, and you've identified the zone that you want to split, and that's it. You've split the zone. So at that point in time, that line isn't quite straight, but that's okay. You want to then update this to be kitchen. Is that right? That to be living. Let's say living 1. And there you go. Oh, I don't think I hit save there. There you go. Let me do that one more time. Hit save. Now that's saved. Done. So, and because that's not straight, I'm just going to do what I always do and get a bit fanatic about making sure everything is square, because it does help down the line. Now you've got that in play. We're going to come back and we're going to get rid of that wall now. Actually, no, we won't get rid of it yet. We'll continue with geometry and then we'll get into specification. So there you go. We've started to draw lots of zones, and we're going to do the same for upstairs now. And we've got this silly zone there. We're going to get rid of that, and then we're going to turn on the zones from below. And we're turning this on because we want to be able to see these relative to the level that we're about to draw, because there is some level of overlap. So we can see how the zone below is being shown. Let's just put on the actual nodes. It doesn't exactly match up, but there are a few I guess important points here that you're going to want to connect to exactly the same vertical plane as the level below, but it is going to overhang here. So I guess this upper level is forming somewhat of a shading to the level below. So let's start drawing. So where do we start here? So probably the easiest place to start is probably over here. And what we'll do, we'll just have a little look at where where the construction lines are. So these are construction points from the level below. My advice would probably be starting with one of those and bringing it around. Oh, let's go ahead and make sure that we've got the same grid settings. Excuse me, the same grid settings now there. And then we can just lock the lines and bring it all away and lock to those points below. So we're bringing that all in nicely like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and call that, let's call that, let's call that bed 4. Bed 4, there it is. Okay. Now, that wasn't quite connecting to that. I want to square that off there. I'm just going to change that there. There you go. Okay, so that's bed 4 in. And let's keep going. So just drag that around a bit, see what we've got to work with. I don't want that snapping there, to be honest. So I'm going to go ahead and turn snapping off. Excuse me. Turn snapping off for a second. Oh, it's closed that zone off. So let me just complete that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of drop in some nodes to the zone that I've selected, and identify that we actually want this zone to finish here. All I'm doing is dropping in the nodes, holding down shift, and then I'm just going to return that around like that so it's square. And there we go. So it's getting into the ballpark of being straight, being representative. There we go. So that's what we're going to call bedroom 3. Done. Okay, save. We're good to go. Now what I've seen is the error of my ways here, so I'm going to go ahead and return that around correctly now. And this is what happens when you kind of don't look, when you're not very familiar with drawings as you draw them. This is a slightly different drawing set than what I've used before. And I'm just going to keep going. So here we go. Let's bring in this other bedroom here. I've seen this point here, so I want to lock to that same point there. And I'm just going to return that a little bit there and rough that in there, and we're going to call that bedroom 2. Okay, hit save. I'm going to bring my snapping back on. Always good to keep your snapping on, keeps things tight. And then I'm going to bring that in there so it's adjacent to that point there. You can have a look at the lengths there. We know that they're 0.5 meter. So I'm going to just keep that nice and straight. There we go. Okay. So it's all looking okay. I can see that there isn't quite on the same line, so I'm just going to keep it as square as possible. Oh, okay. So we've got a point there, so that's actually dictating the depth there. So I'm going to bring that around, change that slightly. And I know it seems over the top, but it's always good to have a very clear modeling rule set in your head to generate the clearest geometry. So now we've got to this point, we can then keep bringing stuff in. Bring that in there, draw that window, bring that around. Seems to be a bit of a construction line there, but I'm going to drop that in like this for the time being. Bath 1. And have I got a point there? See how I haven't got a point there or there? I'm going to just opt to bring in points on these just because it cleans up the model a little bit, makes the geometry a bit tighter. And for this one here, I'm just going to straighten that wall up like that. So all I'm doing is continue to go around and going to drop in a rough one there. And follow this line down here like this. Okay, there we go. And say bath 2. Okay. Okay, getting some snapping issues there. Turn them off. Bring it back around. Ooh. Might just change that a little bit. There we go. Okay. Okay, so that's a walk-in wardrobe there. Let's go ahead and bring that in. And that's probably going to be left open. I'm going to keep that walk-in robe. And there we go. Okay. So I'm sure you're sick of seeing me do this, but it's important to see the kind of the fundamentals of how you draw, because as I have been well known to say, this administration process you're going through is pretty much 70% of the effort. So the clearer you get with this process, the cleaner you are, the more methodical you are, the better your modeling is going to be from an error perspective. Because if you do not have a clear method to model, then you may find yourself in a scenario where you're generating overlaps from one level to another level, and it then creates issues. And Radiance and EnergyPlus won't like that, which are the simulation engines behind better buildings. Corridor 2, I think. Okay, so there we go. Again, just left-clicking, dragging those nodes. Now we're not far from at least a completed geometry. Okay, so there might be a few bits that I've missed off, but I'm going to keep going. I'm clicking save as I go, because it's always good to make sure that you force saves throughout the process. And then what shall I do here? I'm just going to might just bring this around like this. It's not perfect by any means, but this is a relatively good example of there's examples here of details that make no difference to the model itself, or very, very little difference particularly from a compliance point of view. So you could be less focused on some of my practice and have a relatively more simple practice. So they're all in. We've got lots of information in there. Now let's go ahead and see what this looks like. To do so, we're just going to go down to 3D view, left click, and we're going to see what we can see. So here it is, 3D view. We're going to go to show enlarger or enlarge viewer, and then we can see the geometry from the level below. So just as a reminder, I'm going to turn off the roof here. This is the garage. That's the corridor space. That's the living 2, as I called it. And this is the kitchen. And this is the other living space. We're missing something though. We're missing the level above. So let's go ahead and add on the level above. How do we do it? Well, we navigate to levels. And then what we're going to do here, we're going to add a level. So you can do it in multiple ways. You can just add one level. And then select a drawing. So I'm going to select the first floor. I'm selecting that drawing there and hitting save. That's now going to update one level, and then we can go ahead and refresh the 3D view and see what we can see. So if we go to show enlarge viewer, we can now see the geometry stacked on top of each other. So starting to get a bit of information in here. Much more to come, but we've got information. We can see if we turn off the roof here that we've got the zones and they're all represented. We can see some slight color differences here for the floor, and they are referencing the fact that this is an internal floor, which I've just turned off. And then you also have a floor external, that one there, and that's just telling us that it's actually facing towards the outside. Okay, more of that to come. So there we go. We've got some geometry. You're going to go ahead and make sure things are saved. Hit save. We've been saving all along, and then we're going to go ahead and look at specifying this model now. So what's the best way to do this? Well, the best way to do this is pretty much to understand what the challenges are in a drawing set. And to do so, I'm going to go ahead and grab the drawings for this model in order to show you how best to proceed. Here are those drawings again, and what I would like to know, what I'd like to do next is to add some definition around the glazing. So we can see that we have W10 here, W11, W9. These are actually all the same. Exactly the same. So we're going to want to account for those. We're going to want to account for these windows here. These are slightly different, so these are going to need to be set up differently. And if you're lucky enough, you're going to have a set of window and door schedules, and you're going to want to use these moving forward, because this really tells you, particularly from a geometry perspective, that you've got lots of common details here. Actually, also gives me an indication here that my assumption on the floor-to-floor height, I might want to adjust that to 2700, because that's probably the better indication of the actual condition space. But yes, so we've got W1 and W2 and W3 are all the same heights. So that's interesting. It means that we could actually group these together and somehow to specify. We've got W5 seems to be a single height. Then you've also got these windows here. What is this? W6, W7 to W14, W12 and W15 are all very, very similar as well. So while they have different openings, these seem to be sliding, these seems to be awning. Effectively, from a geometry point of view, they're all the same. The reason this is important is because we're going to take all of that into account in the next step where we distribute glazing. So we've also got these sliding doors, SD2, SD3. Looks like they're exactly the same. We've got front door, standard height, actually slightly less than the standard height, I think, 2290. So yeah, so you're going to want to understand all of this. So what we'll do next is that we're going to go ahead and use these references in what we call tagging. And tagging is going to allow us to distribute information super quick across the model. So let's go ahead and use W1, W2 and W3 as an example. So we don't have to go through all of them. So where are W1, W2 and W3 in the model? W3, W2, W1. So they're all wrapping around that living space. Okay, fine, they're wrapping around the living space. Let's go ahead and make sure that we distribute these accordingly. Okay, back in the building app, we're going to go ahead and use a feature called tagging. Probably one of the most important features that you can use on the platform. So definitely time to focus on what this is all about. So tagging allows you to effectively create a tag. I'm going to call this W1 to W3, and the reason I'm calling it W1 to W3 is because all those windows have the same geometry. I'm going to give it a color. I'm going to default to this green here and the symbol triangle. Hit add, and that's it. Nothing too flash about that yet. I'm then going to distribute this tag. So I'm going to go to the ground level layer, and I'm going to get the tag icon here and select W1, W2, and W3. Because I know these are all the same dimensions. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter and then tag those windows. Simple as that. That doesn't seem like much yet, but when it comes to distributing the geometry, it's going to save you a whole heap of time. So if you go back to the zone, select any one of the tags and left click. Then go ahead, select window as default, and you'll see that the tag W1 to W3 is there. And then you're going to then navigate to window placement. You're then going to say, okay, I'm going to want to place this window somewhere on this aspect. So this width here is this width here, and then you can kind of nominate the height by dragging. And I can see that it's 1200, and I can see it happens to be a height of 1050. Okay, so 1050. I'm going to be specific 1050, and then edit that. Okay, so we've now got the geometry for W1, W2, and W3 set out. Okay, I'm going to then, instead of save and close, I'm going to go to the arrow here and save and copy to, and then find the windows with the tag W1 to W3 and copy over the geometry that I've just added to that single window and save and copy to those other two aspects. Now I've saved that, I can then refresh, and then we'll see in our geometry that we're starting to bring in windows W3, W2 and W1 all in their respective positions at their correct dimensions. We haven't quite finished though, because there's one fundamental step that needs to be done. We need to provide specification for these windows. So we're going to navigate down to envelope and windows, left click, go to our tagging function. At the moment, all windows are assigned as default windows with the specifications you can see here. We don't want that. We want to go ahead and say, I'm going to grab W1 to W3, select it, and then we're going to nominate our windows here for both external and internal. You've got to do both. That's an EnergyPlus thing, but you're going to nominate both. And if you're in New Zealand, you're going to see this as system R values, and let's go ahead and nominate some numbers. So you're going to use left and right on your keyboard to adjust the sliders to a level of accuracy, and then should you want to go ahead and nominate airflow settings or openability settings, you can. These are all specific to certain workflows. So this is for an airflow network, and this is for operability, if operability was something that you were looking at. I'm going to leave those out for the time being, hit save, and now W1 to W3 have all been set with this performance value, or these performance values for Windows W1, W2, W3. Hopefully that makes some sense. I'm going to go ahead now and add in some additional tags. I'll add in one more just in case we didn't quite get that. And I'm going to look for maybe an easy one here, SD2 and SD3, and I'm just going to do the same. I'm just going to go to the tags. This time I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to duplicate, edit, SD2 to SD3. It's important to note that the more specific you are here, the better your reporting is going to be, because all of this information comes through to your reporting. So now that's been nominated, I can go to the ground, go to the two windows, hit enter, remove that tag, add that tag. So that's now been added there. We can then go ahead and add zones, select the aspect, select window as default as before, navigate to window placement, and then select the height. So the height here happens to be, I think it's 2290. And if you wanted to split these out for the left and right side of the sliders, you're more than welcome to do that. 2290 from bottom, edit. That's done for that window. I'm now going to save and copy to. And I'm going to copy over to the other window. And that's it. Done. Save. Refresh. And we're going to see a few more windows. Now you could have called those. Glazed doors, should you want. If you want to do that, that's completely up to yourself. But there you go, they're now included within your model. So there was one other big set that I wanted to cover as the final example, and it was the W6 to W14, or W6 to W15 are all the same. Okay, so they're on the level above, and if we go one last time, and I'm going to go duplicate from this point of view because I want to keep all my windows together and then my sliding doors together. I'm going to edit that. That was W6 to W15. I think that's true. Yeah, that's true. And then I'm going to click another color altogether, hit save. Now we've got our 3 color references. We've got our windows there. We haven't specified these yet, so that hasn't come up yet in terms of window. We'll specify those in a second. And I'm now going to go ahead and find those. And these seem to be all these windows up the top here. All the same dimensions. So some easy work here. A good example of some serious time saving here. And those are all one and the same. As are these down the back here, which I haven't nominated as separate windows yet. I'm going to go ahead and do that, so let's go ahead and do that first. Save, and then I'm just going to split these out here just to be separate windows, just because the in your once you do this correctly, you're going to find that the dimensions of those 2 separate windows are shown correctly. And then we're going to go and select any one of those. We're going to call it a window. We're going to go to window placement one last time. This time it happens to be 600 off the ground. We're going to resize, and we're going to resize to 1650. Edit, save and copy to, select them all, or select W6 to W15, and then this time I'm going to, instead of selecting them individually, I'm going to select them all, change the window, same copy to all 9 aspects this time, and there you go. We've now nominated the windows for the entirety of the upper level, and we've got a model that is really coming together and is going to be very, very soon suitable for application. So really you'll find that this workflow wouldn't take you, once you get your head into this, wouldn't take you any longer than kind of 20 minutes to do. And there's a few other bits here, so I'm going to go and tidy those up now, just to speed up the length of the recording, or expedite the recording at least, and then we'll go ahead and proceed with a few more steps. Actually, just before I do, let me make sure I get those windows in here. So we hadn't brought the tagging in here. I'm going to bring that tagging in there because these windows may have different performance specifications to them. So that's the W6 and W15 in here. And then just for argument's sake, for the glazed doors here, I'm going to nominate those sliding doors as glazed doors, and then just bring them in here like this. Okay. There you go. That's it, it's all in, so that's all set up for you. So I'm going to go ahead and just nominate these last few windows, and then we'll do a few more bits in terms of specification, and then we'll be ready to complete this example. Okay, so it's been a few minutes, and I've gone ahead and nominated quite a few additional tags for these different types of, I guess, openings. So we have glazed door openings here. We have some fixed lights here. We've got some upper lights here. Actually, I may as well go to here and show you where it's at. So you'll notice a difference in the colours here, pertaining to the glazing and the glazed opening. Just a reference there. So there you go. So we've got all the windows there. We're not far. It's pretty good. And we've got a few more steps to make to really sort of get this modeled up well enough to start running some more detailed modeling. I think the last step here is just really understand that these haven't been set up yet from a specification point of view. So I just really wanted to drive that point home. So we still have to link these up. It's all done very quickly, very easily. We're just going to go ahead and grab those other tags, bring them in as moderate, and assume some performance values for them. So all quick and easy. And there's some other small points I wanted to make once I do all this. So that's all brought in now for the windows, I believe, and then I'm going to go down to the glazed doors, do exactly the same for the glazed doors. This one is a glazed door. And I believe I've got some other doors. I've got opaque doors as well. So I'm just going to assume these ones are opaque doors, these ones here. And opaque doors will have terrible performance, as they usually do. And that's it. So I can go back to tagging now and make sure that I have the correct nomination underneath each tag. And then we know that we have everything specified and running in the model. Now, before I jump into the levels, I'm just going to kind of go through and connect these spaces up a little bit more. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through to these aspects here by left-clicking the zone, and we're going to just use something called we're going to select the wall, and we're going to call it an air wall, and we're going to default to 0.35 air changes per hour, and that just really connects up these spaces. So if you were to be undertaking daylight model, then you're going to be able to account for the daylight through those zones there. And for folks that are nominating, I guess, more detailed workflows, particularly airflow networks, you may find yourself wanting to nominate internal doors. I'm just going to place an internal door there at a standard height, 820. So I'm just going to nominate that there, and you may find that these need to be brought into your model if you specifically want an airflow network to be run. So I'm just going to pop those in the middle of those openings there, or those aspects there, I should say. And these are all just standard doors popped in the middle like that. You don't need this for many workflows. So I don't think it's absolutely required, particularly if you're doing a minimum compliance. But if you are doing something a bit more interesting, airflow networks, then you're going to need to nominate these. So there you go. There's quite a few there that's not nominated in, and I'm just going to then probably just connect this one up here as an air boundary as well. So a bit of detail here now. We're okay. We're getting into detail, but that's fine. And then we've actually also got a door here as well. And actually, just a small error that I've noted there, that I want this to be an opening here. So just going to do that like that, and that's going to be a door too, because that's leading directly to what I would consider the outside, being the garage. The garage is an unconditioned space, and there we go. So that is basic geometry almost set up there. Now air walls are in. I might pop a last one in there, and I'm getting fairly happy with the level of detail here. I'm just going to hard save that there. While I do hard save there, I'm just going to make a note of the revisions. So view revision. If you want to go ahead and view your revisions, you can just click view revisions, and then you're going to find yourself with all your save points that you've occurred throughout this process. There's the time that I've spent on this morning, and then we can go ahead and go to the last one, the last manual save there, and we're back in the drawing space. So everything is saved for you, so don't worry about that. Now, while we've got our basic geometry there, it's certainly not perfect at this point in time. And we want to add some roof systems on here to start with, and we're also going to want to add some external shading on here. So let's kind of start with the external shading. So what you would notice here is that some of these windows were deeply set back here, And if I go ahead and turn on the level above, actually it probably runs all the way up that, oh actually there's nothing on the level above in that particular space. But we want to add some level of a shading here to represent the shading that's actually there in the design. So in this particular case, what I might do, I might navigate to levels and then go to your settings up here and then go to shading, add shading. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn on the details of the ground floor. And then I'm going to say, you know what, I want to adjust my grid setting and I'm going to add in some shading here. You notice that it's a green color now. And then we're going to just call this, let's call this S1, shading 1. Now that's been brought in there, we can then navigate to the top left hand corner here. And we're going to set a base height of 0 to start at the ground level, an extrusion of 3 meters. Okay. Not millimeters, meters in this particular case, and we're not going to set any opacity to it, and hit save. Now what that's done in this particular case is that it's assumed a level of shading that is outside the thermal line but is popped out here. So we can see that that is external shading, and that effectively provides us with the design intent. And I'll just keep that available there, and I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process in a few different spots here. Very important to do this correctly in terms of aiming to gain a level of accuracy in your model. Sorry, let me go back to levels. I was in the wrong level there for a second. I am going into here, edit shading, and then we're just going to find a few more spots to add some shading in. So there we go, we're going to add another one in there. We're just going to call that S2 and do exactly the same as what we did before. We're just going to give it a dimension. I'm going to pop it up at 3 meters again. That is what it is. And yeah, you can go ahead and repeat this as you need. So these ones here, yeah, no, that's fine. 3 meters again. S3. And let's say we get that one in there, S3, and we don't want to go ahead and repeat that again because we know these are going to be pretty similar. We could go ahead and duplicate that there. So we have a duplication. It's sitting one over the other, and we can then kind of pull that across there, and we can call that S4. So that is S4 there. I'm just going to update it there like that. Save and close. Okay. I'm going to do it one last time. Duplicate. There it is there. Just going to pull that back around a little bit. I'm just going to turn off my snapping. And that's it there. And we're going to call that S5. And save and close. And let's rerun that simulation for a second. And then we can now start to see a reasonable level of detail coming in to these ground levels here, making it feel a little bit better. I've just noticed that a window has not been nominated there, so I'm going to have to go ahead and step back and nominate that window. That happens to be W4, so it's one of the benefits of that viewer. And just going to pop that in there, find out what the dimensions of W4 is. I've got that over on a screen on the other side, and that's actually a fixed window at 2900, that one. So I could drag it, but I don't want to do that. I just want to call that, sorry, 2290 rather than 2900. Edit that. That's now locked in. I'm just going to check that W4 has been nominated. It has done. Okay, we're in good shape. We're in good shape. There's a few more shading devices that can be brought in the front here. So we're going to keep doing this until it's done. And I'm just going to bring that around there like that. Now S6. Okay, so we can see that's kind of disappeared off there now. So that's the S6 there. You'll note it hasn't got any area associated, or a very small area associated to it. That's because it hasn't been extruded yet. Once it's extruded, it will adjust accordingly to 3 meters. And that's now brought in, and I might just go ahead and duplicate that and drag that over here. Keep it on that same line there, and I think probably bringing that around like that is the best way to do this. I might even just do it like that. There you go. So let's see, here's another little trick. If you get a little bit lost, you can go ahead and change the color in order to find that one there, and I believe that one was going to be S7. There you go. Okay, so done. S7's in. I think that should be the last one there. So I'm going to leave that as it is. Match up those colors again, save, and we should be good to go. I mean, there's a few more bits on the garage, but we don't care about the garage because it's not in the condition space. Should you want to match it up, you're perfectly welcome to. Now, let's get on to some other elements set in the levels, which are roofs. Okay, so when you're in levels, you're going to want to go to levels. I'm just going to delete the shading here that I added on by accident, and on the first floor here, so over on this first floor here, I want to add a roof. Now, if I go back to my drawings on the other screen, I can see that I have a very large pitch roof system, 31 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and add that on now. So roof, geometry, add roof. Turn on the level. And what I'll advise you to do, you don't have to do this, but what I'll advise you to do, just out of good practice until you really get things very square, is just connect all nodes for the roof. Again, you do not have to do this if you draw things straight. But if you're learning, it might be better practice to just connect up all nodes, because you won't generate any overlap between the roof and the level below. So just going to bring that in there, and what I'm going to do, I can see that roof is probably wrapping around a bit. So let's call this roof 1, wrapping around a bit, as in overhanging there, not wrapping around. And then I'm just going to grab that there and square that off. So that's great. We've now got a surface that's going to represent a roof. If I hit save and then navigate to roof 1, we see options for layout, pitch, cavity, and eaves. I'm going to select a double pitch here, where we can see the ridge is positioned in the middle of the roof. And I'm just going to offset it a small bit. And then I'm going to go to pitch, and I'm going to set that at 31 degrees. Okay, very high pitch. The roofers will not like that. Now, we're going to then go to cavity. We're going to say it's insulated at the ceiling, and that there is an air change in the roof. Probably 20 is a little bit high. You can default it to 5. And then what we'll also do is we're going to just set some eaves onto this roof as well. And let's just set them at 0.45. There we go. Save and close. And then let's go ahead and look at this one more time to see what we've drawn. Okay, so there we are. It's starting to look very much like a house. Okay, so there it is, starting to come together. We've got a few more bits to do before we can generally say that we've generated the geometry for this house. But we can turn off the roof here now. We can see that that's a cold roof system there. Okay, it's a cold roof system, meaning it's insulated at the ceiling line, and it has a ventilated cavity in the area above. Okay, so next let's go ahead and go back down to the ground level here, and we're going to add a roof at the ground level. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that I've got to add a roof here and add a roof here over the garage too. Now, these were two different roof systems nominated on the drawings with a 5-degree angle on it. Let's go ahead and nominate something. So roof, add geometry, turn on your layers, ground, so we can see what we're doing. And actually you want to turn on both layers here. So what we want to know here is effectively where we're going to draw. Now, because we know a little bit about the model here now, we know that we have the ground level, and that's the garage there, and we have the first floor. So we've got to make sure that we connect to points relative to both. So that's what I've just done there. I've turned them both on, and then I'm going to then start drawing. I'm just going to rough it in, whatever. Roof 2. We can be more precise. I'm going to adjust my grid settings again, and then I'm just going to drag these points around. And roofs are somewhat tricky because they are fundamental to ensuring that we have a correctly drawn geometric space. And now that's in there, I'm going to nominate a slightly different pitch. I think the pitch is way down at 5 degrees, and I believe the heading is to the right. So I'm just changing the heading there by 90 degrees. Use your back and forth arrows on the keyboard, and then that will draw the pitch down there. And I'm going to pop on some eaves as well, and I'm going to keep these at 0.45 again just for consistency, and see if this runs. So you do tend to get, as I say, you do tend to get challenges with roof systems. Nothing too challenging here yet, but there is the roof. There it is there, sloping that direction. Looks a bit awkward to me, but we can go ahead and turn that roof off, and then we can see that that's a cold roof system again. Okay, cold roof system, and that's directly above the garage. So finally, we're going to go around to this last roof system, and what we're going to do here is something a little bit different. So what we want to do here is nominate a roof over here, and I want to slightly go away from the drawings here because I want to do something a little bit more complicated. I'm going to go to the roof again on the ground level. I'm going to edit roof, and then we're going to go over here, and we can see everything is all locked on here. So I'm imagining I might get a little challenge here because there's quite a lot of nodes going on here that we need to connect to. So we're going to draw the roof to start with. Okay, we can draw it however we want. I'm going to draw it like this, and I'm going to square it off in this manner here. Okay, hit enter. Roof 3. Okay, and now I've nominated that. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I change the pitch to something very, very low, 5 degrees according to the drawings, and we're going to set it at 9 degrees. Okay, and we often will find that you get challenges to roof systems like this if they're not drawn very well. In this case, we don't have any challenges yet, but I haven't completed the example that I wanted to provide. That's a weird roof system, isn't it? It's a very weird roof system. I'm going to put on some eaves onto this particular roof because I forgot to pop those on there. I like to pop on an eave. They're very good ideas, eaves. And save. Okay. So there we are. We've saved that roof system now, and that's fine. And we're going to see some eaves pop up over there, and it's now looking a bit uniform. And we can start to see that we have lots of detail in here. Okay. So what I might do, just out of interest, or just for to improve the reality of these roofs, I'm going to go ahead and just offset them slightly. Again, offset them 300 mil. So to be clear what I'm doing here, and I'll show you in this example here is I'm offsetting it so the roof doesn't slope down to really the top of the ceiling there, or the 3000 mil. So I'm just going to do it like that. There we go. Save that, rerun that, and you'll see that the roof is now popped up. And once we get a view of that, let's go into the full view. You'll see that there's now room for insulation to be sitting there, which we didn't have before. Okay, so this is fine. This is looking good. Everything is meaningfully represented here, but it's not quite there yet, because what I wanted to do was one last detail. And this is an important detail, particularly for residential homes, is that we often have different types of roof systems. We have warm roof systems where the insulation is at the roof line, and we have cold roof systems such as these examples. So I want to convert this room so effectively the insulation is projected to the roof line. This is how to do it. Go to ground, select the zone. You're going to go to your roof settings, and then you're going to go to ceiling, and you're going to go to projected. You're going to hit save, and then try and rerun your roof. Living space 2 on level 1 must have a point at this location, and this is the kind of thing that you will see when you go ahead and project a roof system. So what does this actually say? So living space 2 on level 1 must have a point. Okay, so this is living space 2, and it's saying this space here on level 1 must have a point at this location here, and that's because clearly there's a conflict somewhere. So where does that actually match up? It's probably, I'm imagining it's over here. So if I hover over here, you can see that down the bottom here you'll see some dimensions here, and those dimensions are telling us where the cursor is. So if I go over here in the living space 2 on level 1 and find myself over in the -12, I'm over here, and it looks like that location there has not got a node, and that could fix that particular example. We have another error. Cannot split a section with a window on it. Okay, and this is one that does happen as well, and this is in relation to the window needing to be split to account for the adjacent roof that's been put there. So let's go and find where this error is. Now it's not immediately clear, so let's build this up. So we have the ground level here. We don't have any windows on these aspects here, and we're looking for a window because this is what the message is saying here. So what we're effectively saying is that we've got to go to the first floor, and if we look at the details here, we can see that the roof that was drawn, and I'll go to the roof because that makes more sense to do it like that, has been drawn here. But what it's saying is actually between this point and this point here. So let's go to -18.75, as you can see in the bottom left hand corner. There's an issue over here, and that issue is that effectively we're drawing a roof adjacent to a window, and we can't do that. So what does it mean? Well, it means that we've got to go ahead and make our way to that window here in order to split it. So I know that probably needs to be split there at about that point, and I'm going to go ahead and reattach a window here, but split the window into 2. And this is not something that you'll come across too often, to be honest. I'm going to go ahead and use the save and copy to function. I'm going to be lazy, just select everything and copy that over to there. Now I've split that window out into two, then we can have an adjacency associated to it. And when I rerun that, that shouldn't be an issue anymore. And it looks like that's running. Always good sign when you get the 3D geometry running. And then once we've done that, we can say, okay, what have we actually achieved? Well, we can turn off the roof. And we can see now that I've projected the ceiling or the insulation line all the way to the roof line, because when I toggle roof on and off, I can see we've got insulation here, but there's no insulation here, and that's because the insulation is at the roof line itself. So that should help you with some of the more complex scenarios around nominating roof systems, and that is by, that's just a example. You will find more complexities than that. It's also worth noting that when it comes to roof systems, that you can certainly draw more than one roof system should you want to. So if you were to split this down the middle here and draw roof system 1 and roof system 2, and they could be completely different types of roof systems, pointing towards each other, box gutters, those types of things, then you can go ahead and draw multiple roofs all at the same time. Okay, so you effectively just consider this as a planar surface, and that you're adding angles to it, and then that can be, you could have 5 of those across here should you wish to. Okay, one last thing that I'd like to bring in, just because I know these do come up as well, is the fundamentals around adding some more complexity to that roof system, and I'm going to call that more complexity a skylight. Okay, so skylight there, add a skylight. They must be square. I'm just going to add a small skylight here. That's all I've done there. Added a small skylight. I'm going to hit save and close, or save. And then that skylight now is being having its performance nominated as a default. So as a default here. So that is the default performance specification for that skylight. And we'll now see that shown in the larger viewer. So there you go. You've got skylight included in there as well. So we're going off piste here a little bit. That's not exactly in the drawings, but I will leave that in the design because it's useful to reference performance attributes later on in other courses. So we're getting there. It's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to finally focus on just some of the external shading. So if I go to external shading for the site, which is over here, I'm going to turn on everything now. Okay, and while we don't have any external shading nominated here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, do you know what? There's some additional. There's another building, and there's another building here, for example, and it just happens to occupy this area that I'm drawing here. It's not so important. Let's call it building A, and hit set. Okay. And we've got that there. That's square enough. That's cool. It might be a little bit relative to this one here, so I'm going to bring it round to something a bit more like this. And actually, I'll just bring it set it back to the same lines as this one here. 10 meters, 10 meters. Okay, a little bit of a additional detail, not really beneficial, but there you go. There is a shape. We're going to go ahead and nominate this shape as having an extruded height of, let's say, 6 meters. It's going to be on the ground, and we're going to add a roof to it, and we're going to add a double pitch roof to that shape, and we're going to leave it 22.5. We're going to leave it at the defaults here, and then we're going to hit save. And then what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do the lazy duplication. I'm going to drag the duplicated shape over here, just so we can have another one on the side there. And I'm going to give that a nomination of B. Done. Save and close. And that's now achieved the results of having 2 masses associated to either side of this building. Okay, Should you want to really go to town and want to start nominating things like trees, and you certainly can have a crack at that. Let's say this tree here, for example, if I select a vertical shading, and there's many numbers of ways you could do this. You could go ahead and do something like this. So T1, for example, tree 1. And I'm just going to do an elaborate example here. T2, T3, and I don't think this is generally necessary, but I'm not telling you how to do it. So we have a screen height default of 10 meters. That's a pretty big tree. Let's actually go and have a look at what I've just drawn, just so it makes a bit more sense. So rerunning that now for the 3D view. This is just a DXF viewer, and there it is. It's a big old tree, right? So that's a big old tree. You might want to add a bit more detail into your tree. You may want to have an opacity to it, which would be a reasonable assumption. You may want to change or add an offset to it, so determine whether the top or the bottom are offset to create a complex triangular or trapezoidal shape. So let's go ahead and do that for the bottom, and let's just set this as an arbitrary 40%, and let's go ahead and have a look at what that means to the shape. Rerun that, and we'll pop it into that the larger viewer, and we can see that line is now tapering back 40%, and you may want to do that just to be a little bit more representative. You may even want to go into a lot more detail here. So there you go. We want to bring that around. So we can repeat that on each of these now. This is a way to do it. Or you may want to just really duplicate one that has already been set up, and that's probably going to be the most reasonable way to do it. So there you go. Sorry, I didn't do that correctly. No, that wasn't the correct one. T1. And 40%. And T3, which I'm going to update that. And this is for, let's bring that around, 40% bottom. Okay. Use your arrows on your keyboard. Done. So we've now updated that for all components of this imaginary tree. Oh, I've got one incorrect there, so that one there, I'm sure someone spotted me as I was doing that there, so that one's incorrect. So I've got that the wrong way round, I think. You can hover over those and find the one that's incorrect. Not exactly sure how they got that incorrect. Not sure why that's incorrect, to be honest. Reverse offset. I think I just clicked reverse offset. Is that correct? Yes, it was. So that will be now correct. Now, one last trick I'm going to do. I'm going to offset the base height. So let's say you've got no leaves at the bottom of that tree, and I'm going to do that for 1.5. The reason I'm going into this detail is that just to show you that with a bit of imagination, you can go ahead and really start nominating quite a lot of detail in this process. And I'm going to go ahead and do one last thing, and this is probably going to put me into officially put me into crazy town. Is I'm going to put a trunk. Okay, trunk. Okay, an appalling spelling of trunk there a second ago. So there we go. I'm just going to put that there like that. It's going to be odd shaped trunk. Save that, and then I'm going to drag that into space. So I'm going to get rid of my locking there, and I'm going to hit save. And let's actually just go back one last time. Oh, I duplicated. What I want to do is set the base height at 1.5. No, set it at 0, and set the extrusion at 10. And no, that's not correct. There you go. And yeah, I think that's what I wanted to achieve in this particular one. So I'm just going to refresh that, and we can now see that quite an elaborate shading has been added on, where we've kind of offset it there. Still not sure why that one isn't correct, but you can see that that's now starting to behave a little bit more like a tree. Still confused as to why. I'm going to change this to 3 meters just to make it stand out a little bit more. Opacity offset. No, it's a mystery as to why that one's not rendering how I expect it to render. But anyway, there you go. So it's just an example of how you can really go to town with some of this stuff. I think that's probably all we need to cover in terms of shading now. Now, last of all, we've set up your model from a geometric point of view. We have everything that we need there. We've attached specifications. I think it's worth just mentioning about spaces at this point. At this point in time, we know nothing about what your model is actually being set up to do, and is setting up to what we call a default space. So every zone within your model is assuming all of these inputs here, which may make no sense at all. So what you'd probably want to do is create an indicative space, let's say H1 housing, for example. And this is effectively what is within H1 housing. Hit select. We don't have a tag. I'm just going to say H1 housing, and this is just a way to do it. I'm showing you how the feature works, potentially not the best way. And then I'm going to select this color here, hit save. So we've now got a tag in play for this space type to nominate all of this information here. Okay, so the issue is though that hasn't been distributed to the model yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the tagging function here and show you something a little bit different. I'm going to hold down Control and drag while selecting tag, and distribute the tag for H1 housing to all of those spaces there. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the garage and turn that tag off, because that's not a conditioned space. And I'm going to go into that space there and just remove the settings associated to it. Okay. And then I'm going to go to the level above and do exactly the same. Okay. Select tag, drag by holding down Control, hit enter, H1. Now you have everything nominated as per these inputs here. Not the default space inputs. There you go, that's your model set up, ready to run. And just as I'm about to jump off, I've just realized that I just need to cover solar. So if you do have solar on your design, and let's say it's on the upper level here, you could go ahead and nominate it. You'd nominate it here actually under renewables all the time, and go to your first floor. And then really just draw the solar. So let's say we have solar running across that side there, and not probably a good dimension for a PV array, but that's what I've intended to draw there. Let's just call it PV, and let's say that's 1.8, and then what I'm going to say here is that that's set at an angle of angle equal to the roof, which I believe was 31. Yes, it was. And then you can then set your efficiencies in order to determine the size of the system, and maybe offset it a small bit from the actual roof line. Hit save and close, and then we're going to have one last look at what this looks like in your model. Hopefully it makes a bit of sense. And there is your PV directly attached to your design. So there you go. That is geometry for residential buildings. There's a lot of input there, and these skills that you've just learnt or are going to learn are readily transferable to then undertake workflows across the platform for residential buildings. Okay, thanks a million for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.